Hello everybody, welcome back to another JJ Talk here. I am with some good friends of mine. Today, we're going to talk about something so incredible. I'm going to let them introduce themselves before that, but thanks for tuning in. Hope you stay till the whole thing, and hope you get something out of this, because my wife told me these talks have to be educational, because nobody cares about our lives. But if we give something back, then maybe people will listen. So anyways, hello ladies, and welcome, and thanks so much for being on this, even though this was kind of last minute, but I'm so excited because today's topic is really exciting. So before that, can you please introduce yourself? Who are you, and what do you do?
Sure. Well, it's exciting to be here. I'm Emily, and my husband Alex and I have two children. They are 3 and 1.5. And we live in Central City. We're both teachers. I stay home right now with our kids, though. And so I've just been learning a lot in this whole journey of parenting lately. And I'm excited to reflect a little bit about that.
Hello, my name is Emmy. I also have a 3 and a 1.5-year-old. Our kids are almost the same age exactly. And I am pregnant with my third. I and my husband live in Jakarta City, and that's one of my children. And we have been in Jakarta City for 4.5, going on 5 years. And we are just doing this thing called parenting.
And today, I forgot I am a father of a 2.5-month-old now. So exciting. And so I've invited these incredible moms to kind of just share a bit about their experience, because why try to figure out parenting on your own when you've had others who've figured it out more? But today, the topic especially that we can talk about today is parenting and faith, something like that, because what I love, we all go to the same church, and I've enjoyed and I've appreciated being able to just journey with them and see their different parenting styles. But maybe you guys can share when we talk about parenting and faith, because what's awesome is my wife and I were trying to build some family values. We actually had a little family value vision setting session a few days ago, because we wanted to figure out, like, what is it that we want for our family. And even before we had the baby, we talked about, like, what kind of parents do we want to be. And I think having our faith, our belief, we as Christians, is a really important thing as a foundation. Can you guys talk about, I guess, your journey in talking about faith being one of maybe your family values, and how that's been so far in your parenting journey?
Yeah, sure. So for Ian and I, my husband, we came from different upbringings. Our families raised us with different religious beliefs. I was raised in a Christian family. My husband was not. And so for us, as my husband, who's been a believer for 5-6 years now, we've kind of had to start from the beginning and just kind of learn what it really take it back to the basics, which I think a lot of adults that were raised in Christian households, they don't really think much of the basics. They just kind of, this is what I believe, this is what I've been taught to believe. So Ian and I have really gotten to go back. We read the stories that we're now reading to our children, all the simple Bible stories, and just learning, like, the stories in the Bible aren't just children's stories. They're real stories with real people. And how do we want those characteristics of those people that God loved so much, and the Bible mentions a number of times, how do we want that to reflect us in our parenting and our friendship to each other and to our children, how we want them to be to each other as siblings. And so I think for us, every family will have different sets of values, but I think going back to the basics of what the Bible talks about and not what 2024 Christianity talks about is really important for us, because you can have two very different sets of values if you only look at what today's culture says about Christians and their beliefs and who God is, what God allows, what God doesn't allow. And so that's kind of been our go-to, and we're still learning. Our kids are little, we're young, and Jesus helps us along the way.
Yeah, I think I'm going to jump off of what you mentioned about culture and society, and how that, no matter where you live or what you do, has a large influence on you as a family. If you are out working somewhere, if you're going into a church, or just day-to-day life, right? And so I think what sets us apart as people who look to Jesus first is it has to be reflected in our family. And so it's going back to what are the things that we do with kids at this age at home, because that's where we spend most of our time, right? So realizing that as parents and as a family unit, we now have the responsibility from God to lead them and shepherd them to a relationship with God. And so I think as adults, we sometimes take for granted our faith, right? Because maybe we've been in it for a while, or at least we have like the logic and the reasoning to look at the Bible and like really study it and to see it as a living word that we can like draw inspiration from. We can hear God's voice through it. But for little kids, they can't like study theology yet, right? And so I think it goes back, like you said, to the basics, where it's how are you living every day as an example to your kids, and what are you doing as a family to live out your values? So for us, we realize, wow, like having kids is a huge kind of like overhaul of your own character. It exposes your sometimes worst behavior, because oftentimes you're low on sleep. You might not get as much time with your spouse as you used to. And these are things that I know from experience that can just kind of like lead you to, do and say things that might not align with your values. And so it's really walking with God and seeing how he wants to refine you for the sake of leading your kids to his truth and to the good fruit of relationship with him. And so I think it takes humility. That's what I've been learning a lot lately, and I think Alex has too, to really say like, wow, Lord, like, what do you want to do in me so that when we do have young kids, I can like grow from this and be better. And by better, I don't mean like better like the world means better parenting, right? We've probably all seen examples when we're like, well, I can't do that. Those parents are doing this. That stuff doesn't matter. Like, what matters is unconditional love and how are you walking out the fruit of the Spirit in relationship with God. So that humility with your spouse is probably what I've been learning the most, is like, that's how they're going to see Jesus, is if you are humbly submitting yourself to him and like telling your kids like, hey, I'm sorry I acted this way and please forgive me. Like, I'm going to try to be more loving. I'm going to try to be more gentle. Like, those are the things that we have the privilege with kids this age to start learning about ourselves, because it really is growing in our adult character so that we can help shepherd them a little bit better than maybe we would have before. So
I was just going to add to what Emily had just said, that having little kids in general is a slap in the face. That's all I was going to say. Trying to raise them to be like Jesus and to love Jesus is not easy, but it is probably the biggest blessing and the biggest gift that I think any parent can have. And for Emily and I both as stay-at-home moms in this season is a challenge. And there are days where I think we both are like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. It's a lot in different aspects, but it's a lot of good too. And no job is all good and all bad, and parenting is a job as well. It's a blessing. Jesus says it's a blessing over and over and over again. But I will say, being a parent that's trying to teach your child what the world is not teaching them, especially when we live in a country that is not primarily Christian, it's hard. But it's the Bible says over and over again to continue on the path, and the reward is great. And the reward is great because the reward is Jesus. And that may not be a tangible thing, but it's something that I hope that our kids know from the way that we act to ourselves, to our husbands, to our friends, to them, to the children. And yeah, just apologizing. Our kids are almost 3 and they know when we apologize. They know when we've made a mistake, they tell us. My kid tells me. And then they appreciate it when we apologize and say that mommy's going to do better. And so just knowing that it's hard, but it's absolutely worth it when you see the fruit of the Spirit come out in your active toddlers.
And I want to come back to the challenges, because I think, to know the challenges is a good start to make sure we're aware of what we're prepared for. But you guys are talking about, okay, so you guys grew up in the States, but then you're here living in Jakarta, which is an Asian country. So there's already challenges there, I'm sure. But then the challenge I want to touch on today is, it's already one thing to try to figure out parenting, all the challenges that come with parenting. How do you manage the challenges of parenting with this desire to want to make sure that your household is being brought up in these Christian values, such as forgiveness, humility. Those are some of the things that I caught earlier.
Yeah, I think because we now have like newly 3-year-olds or soon to be 3-year-olds, where some of the behavior starts to like begin, right? Like you hear things about toddlers and like little kids and tantrums. And I'm going to be honest, like up until about 2 weeks ago, my kids were like extremely well behaved. And so even in the past
Until 2 weeks ago.
And that's why this conversation is so poignant right now, because it's like, oh, like now I have to do both of those things. Manage the huge feelings that little kids have and they need to navigate. Manage myself responding to those. I've never been around toddlers in my life, like ever. And so I have no clue. And so that is where I feel like finding examples of families maybe that are in a season ahead of you who have raised children who are willing to pour into you, or if you don't have that, even like finding people online like who produce content like this, whose goal is to like share their walk. I find a lot of value in that. And so like finding people that you trust that, you know, love the Lord and want to like share from that foundation. But I think lately with kids who, you know, are starting to act more like humans, we know humans are messy, right? I've had to really just like realize that they look at us as like their examples. They're going to take from what we do. And so before I parent them, like I have to, you know, parent myself and make sure that I'm regulating my emotions. I'm responding appropriately so that, you know, when they do act out a little bit, then it's not like this much bigger problem.
Yeah.
And so I think it's kind of like getting ahead of that and realizing that we rely on God for our strength, and then our kids look to us for that, and then through that they will also see God's hand in their life. So
I love it. This is parenting. We are trying to do a parenting vlog, and there's just children in the background.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
These moms are like, what? Emmy, what about you?
Well, let's just start off by saying that I'm not perfect. And I know that the viewer knows that. You don't know me, but you know that I'm not perfect. But sometimes when people come on the internet, you for some reason think that because they put themselves on the internet that they assume they're perfect. And I'm going to be the first to say I'm not. And I'm going to also say that my 2 friends here are not perfect either. But you can take solidarity in knowing that nobody is perfect. So for us in this household, I navigate the struggles by I really monitor what comes in through our house. For us, that means what is shown on our television. For my kids, what they listen to as in music. And you can say it's old-fashioned, you can say it's a little bit conservative, that's okay. My kids don't watch new shows. They don't watch shows that were made in the last 10 years. And I think Emily can also attest to that. Our kids love old school shows. There's a lot of research that shows that the newer shows that are being put in front of little kids is simply not healthy for them. Whether it's what they're saying in this show or just the animation of it and what it's doing to them and their development and their attitude. So I'm really cautious. My husband and I are really aware. We watch a lot of Bible stories, a lot of kids-centered biblical stories, and cartoons that they love too. But for me, that's the thing as a stay-at-home mom whose kids are not in school. That's what I can control. I can control what's in this house, and I focus really hard on that. We don't listen to much secular music. If we're listening to music, we're listening to the worship songs we're going to listen to at church on Sunday, so that when we go to church, my kids know what songs they are, and they're excited, and they like to dance, and they like to worship. But with that, my kids also have been feeling their feelings lately, and something that I remember on a daily basis in this last season is my mom once told me when my older son was little that, Emmy, they're not the terrible 2s, they're not the terrible 3s, they are the trying 2s and they are the trying 3s, and they're learning. They're just learning. They're becoming little people, like Emily said. They're becoming humans, right? And they don't know just as much as we want them to know. They don't. And that's our job as the adults. And if we aren't properly regulated and emotionally stable and spiritually sound, that's where you get a lot of the challenges that, like I said, I'm not perfect, and I apologize to my son often for when I don't have perfect moments, because as stay-at-home moms, I think we both probably get very overstimulated, and the crying is a lot, and the tantrums, or the asking of the questions, or of the asking of things, and the demanding of things, maybe not asking, maybe they're demands. It becomes a lot. So I would just say, controlling what you can and accepting what you can't, and then asking God the next morning to help you do it again and again and again. Right. But for us, I'd say the things we bring into the house, both content-wise on the television, we don't do a no-screen family. We love shows, and we try to do our best in using them to benefit our kids' lives instead of potentially hindering their development and their spiritual development as well.
And the words, like you said, the words that you speak over your kids, or what you allow to come into their minds, will have an impression throughout their whole life. And so you have the power to speak life or death over your children. I like to begin and end the day and reflect with the kids and just pray over them, because sometimes that's all I can do, because you can't reverse the way you handled things, but every morning is a new experience of God's mercy, and you have the chance to try again. So,
other than praying, can you guys talk about any other rituals or traditions that you do with your family that are faith-based?
Rituals?
Is that better? Should I use rituals?
I'm not sure that's a Christian word.
Traditions.
Traditions.
So, Emmy, you're talking about playing music, worship music. Talking about prayer here. What other traditions would you have done, or would you like to have in your family?
For us, a lot of it goes back to being in nature, because we experience God, as Alex and I do, a lot being out in nature and in God's creation, because we are God's creation. And I think for kids, again, you can't really cram theology on them yet. You can at age-appropriate intervals, but they need, tangible examples. And so being in awe and in wonder of what God has created, and looking at ants, and you don't step on ants. You can teach your kids practical things, and it doesn't have to be a lavish, outdoor excursion. It can be a tree, and talking about what God has made and how it all plays a part in our world together. So, and taking care of our bodies too, in the way of honoring God, and that looks different for every family, and doing it for God's glory.
Yeah, and for us, it's funny, my son killed an ant a few days ago.
Oh
and he was really proud of it. So it's just funny that you said that. It just made me think, sometimes toddlers are just toddlers, and they're just,
mine sat on one.
Yeah, just teaching them that you just don't, whatever. For us, we pray before each nap time and each bedtime. That is. And sometimes when one of my toddlers is in a mood, they will say, "No, I don't want to." I say, "That's too bad. You just sit and listen." and I remind them, because you're not always going to want to. But to me, like Emily said, it's what I can control, and I'm going to pray over my child before they go to sleep. I don't care if they don't want to. And we have regular dance parties. And, you get, like I said, it might sound silly, but you get to choose what kind of music you have a dance party to. You can do the soundtrack of the new Disney movie, or you can play some fun Christian songs for kids that they don't know the difference in the words, but they will eventually, and they love it. And so, at least for our church, they upload the worship set list the few days before the Sunday, and we listen to it every Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll listen to the first couple of songs, and when we go to church on Sunday morning, my 3-year-old knows what song it is. He may not know the words, but he knows the sound, and he likes the song. And I think it's all just starting here. No, they're not going to remember everything that happened at 2, 3, 4 years old, but their heart will, and their soul will, and they'll remember growing up that mom and dad tried. With our husbands working all the time, when they come home, it's really important that they play with them, and they teach them, and they talk to them in the fatherly way, because moms can't be dads and dads can't be moms. We're all great parents, but there's a really specific role that each of us come to play with our children. And so, I don't think we have a lot of traditions. Our kids are little. We don't take communion regularly together. We don't do those kind of things right now. But as they get older, figure out how we navigate holidays, what big holidays like Easter and Christmas, what that means. Is it about presents? Is it about Easter egg baskets? Is it that plus this, the story of Jesus, being born and dying? Just things that we'll have to be navigating every year as the kids get older and as the culture tells them that Christmas is about gifts. Well, is it though? So we're still learning. I mean, every year is a new year, and every day is a new day. But that's where we're at right now.
And just last thing, because I know people sometimes are like looking for advice before they have kids, and I think, if your intent is to raise your kids, to walk with the Lord, like thinking about these things before you have kids, so that you and your spouse at least have had some conversations where it's not like, oh, it's our kids' second Christmas, like let's figure out how we're going to approach it. Like maybe you start thinking about how you want to do these things, start doing them before you have kids, so that it is like a natural thing in your life, and it's never too late to like start implementing. But if that's your goal, like you can do that even with your spouse or even with yourself if you're single.
But I got something else.
Let's go.
I'll also say, I don't know what Josh and Jeannie's viewers demographic looks like on YouTube, okay? But I will say, Emily and I are in a unique position where we are raising our children, like I said previously, in a culture that is not primarily Christian. Where we are is, I think, approximately 97% Muslim. And there's a lot of beauty in this culture. There's a lot of beauty in Islam and in Muslim people, and Indonesians are incredible people, and I love them dearly. But when you are in a culture that is completely in opposition to what you are trying to teach, not completely, but it's different, you almost have to be that much more intentional about what you are putting into your kids' heads, and you really have to focus. And it's similar in America, where they don't really care what you believe. And you can believe in anything, and you can be anybody and be anything. And you have to be very intentional. There is no one place where you're going to go and be like, this is the perfect Christian environment. It's hard everywhere you go. But I will say, for us here in a country this large and in a city this busy, where you don't have a lot of support religiously, you need to find a community. And whether it's people that have gone before you with kids older, or like Emily and I, we have kids literally within weeks of the same age, or like Josh and Jeannie, we've been friends with them since we moved here 4.5 years ago, and now they're just having their first child. It doesn't matter. Find community. Find adults that have had kids that are out of the house now. Find people that don't have kids. You'll learn, but don't get all of your information from the internet. Find friends. Find real life sources, because you'll have your kid and be like, well, that was different than I thought, and having solidarity and friends like Emily, when I'm like, okay, let's go back and forth. Did your 3-year-old do this today? And you're like, oh my gosh, this is just developmental. But then also remembering, okay, like, we got this, friend. Like, we can do this. We are equipped. You are equipped. Even if you don't feel like it. And like Emily said, the mercies are new every morning. So that's all I got.
This is amazing. I need to know, because I'm about to, because you guys have 2 to 3 years more experience than me. What would you say to someone, like you said, because you gave some tips for those that might be parents, but also those that are existing parents. I love the whole community bit, Emmy, because I think that is so important. Emily, what about you? Anything for me or for any of the viewers out there?
I think something that's easy and quick is that God works perfectly through imperfect parents. We can try as hard as we want to follow all these pieces of advice and to do it perfectly, but at the end of the day, it is God who has called you to be the mother or father of your child for a reason. And so through the things you do really well and the things that you mess up on, those are lessons, and those are things that are perfect for your child's life and their relationship with the Lord. And I think something else that stuck out that has helped me is that our goal is to not raise kids that are like dependent on us forever and like want to come back to us necessarily. That's a great thing, but it's to raise children who are independent of us and dependent on God, because that is where they will find their satisfaction in life. They will not find their satisfaction through you providing them with a ton of money. Like those things are important. The money, what you eat, the toys, all the education, that's important, but that is not the most important thing. It's the relational aspect and how you walk with them through the challenges of life. And we do that together in community.
I love that. Help raise kids to be independent of us as parents, but dependent on God.
Right.
Is that right? Is that what you said?
It's
Yeah.
not like they're 18. They, like in some cases, maybe like they're 18. They check out. They go, bye. I'll see you. Twice a year. Like that's fine. That's some of it.
That is not
But
fine.
that
My
is-
children don't
okay.
do that to me.
I just mean, yeah.
Don't do that to
But
mom.
like, you want them above all else to be full of God's peace and walking with Him, and you're the biggest part of that journey. That's what you're called to do, and that's the best job ever. So
Thank you so much. Emmy,
Thank
last
you.
thoughts? Any last words for me and future parenting, trying to figure this out?
It's hard, but every day is a living testament that my kids are, to me, they're the best things that I could have ever created. And I think that children are a blessing, and I don't think that the Bible mistakenly put that in there. It is so intentional for moms and dads to know that children are a blessing, while the entire world is telling you a variety of other things, whether the world is too populated or they're not going to be raised right or it's not a good environment, and all may be true, but the Bible says that children are a blessing, and therefore I believe it. And hence I'm gonna have 3 kids under 3 in a couple of months, and it's gonna be a party. And I just pray every day that my kids grow to know the Lord, and that they grow to see that their mom and dad love the Lord, and that it's not just something we talk about, but it's something we live out, and that they can see that in the way that their parents are, and their grandparents and their cousins, and hopefully they'll, everybody, like that would be that's the ultimate goal, that everyone that they encounter knows and loves the Lord.
Wow, I've been truly blessed by what you guys have shared, and I think this is it. It's again, we don't claim to be experts. I mean, I don't know if anybody claims to be an expert in parenting. Please let me know if you do. But to just
You're
share,
lying.
right? To share
You're
experience,
lying.
to share experiences, and I love that our topic today isn't sharing various theories or trips or tips to be a better parent, but just to have that soul foundation on Christ, and to have those godly values implanted in our family. And thank you so much for sharing your guys' experience with your families. And I don't know, what do you guys think? Leave it in the comments below, or send a DM or whatever to say that, hey, I didn't agree with that, or maybe you agreed with something. I don't know. Get in touch with us, but
ask questions.
Ask questions. I think that's the thing. Like Emmy said, get in community. Emily's saying, ask questions. Like, don't do this alone. You're not alone. You got this, guys. We got this parenting thing. It's gonna be awesome. They've been doing it for 4,000 years. Kids have been just fine. It's gonna be okay, or more. I don't know. I don't understand history. Anyways, that's it. That's all for today's talk. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks to
Bye-bye.
Emmy and Emily, and see you guys next time.